Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you all to our session on E-rate, what's new, and Q&A. I have with me Jen Thule, the State E-rate coordinator for the Oregon Department of Education. She has worked at Intermountain ESD, who's done just a ton of work on E-rate for not only Oregon, but broader. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen. And Jen, you'll take it away.
Thank you so much. I would just like to say I'm so excited to be here again this year, not only as an attendee, but also as a speaker this year. I am the new State E-rate coordinator for the state of Oregon. My team and I at Intermountain ESD accepted the state position here back in February this year. So we're really excited to see where this can take us and what we can do for everybody here in Oregon. I am going to have a little presentation today just to kind of cover the program and kind of the general idea of E-rate. I also do have a little bit of a brief presentation on the Emergency Connectivity Fund. It still is not, we still don't have the official rules for that, so I can kind of give you some broad strokes of that, but that will be at the end of this, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions that come up or anything like that. So I am going to add in my document here, and then we will get started. Okay, so my presentation should be coming up. Can everybody see it? I just want to make sure that you guys can see what I'm discussing here. Yes? Okay, perfect. So the E-rate Schools and Library Program. Here on this first page is going to be my contact info, so it'd be great if you could write that down. Any questions that come up in the future, my phone number or my email, shoot them my way. If I can answer them, I would be happy to. If I need to direct you to somebody else, then I can easily do that too. So make sure that you get this contact info down. All right. Okay, what is E-rate? E-rate is a federal program. The Federal Communications Commission is who is the top dog in this program. Next is the Universal Service Administrative Company, which we call USAC. So FCC issues the orders, the policies, the rules. They give those to USAC, and USAC is in charge of all the day-to-day duties. They're the ones that make sure everyone's being compliant. They answer questions. They run the PIAs. They do all of that. The E-rate program provides discounts to eligible schools and libraries on eligible services and equipment between 20 and 90%. We are going to go over how you get your discount rate and how you can change that. All right, who is eligible? So public and non-public nonprofit schools K-12, you must provide elementary or secondary education, and you cannot have an endowment exceeding 50 million. Public libraries, academic libraries, and research libraries are also eligible, but you must meet the definition of a library found in the Library Service and Technology Act of 1996. There are lots of consortia around the nation, and as long as you are comprised of eligible entities, then you are eligible as a consortia. Also, non-instructional facilities. So that's a little bit different, where obviously the non-instructional facilities, you're not providing education, but your admin buildings, your bus barns, stuff like that, you are eligible, just in a little bit different capacity. So you're only eligible for Category 1 service rather than Category 1 and Category 2. And for those of you that may be new to the E-rate program, we're going to go over what all of those categories are and what they mean. All right, categories of service, there's two. Category 1, which is services that go to the school. That's your internet access, your fiber, stuff like that. The maximum discount for Category 1 is 90%, and there is no E-rate funding cap. So as long as you go through the process correctly, there's no cap on what you can get for Category 1. Category 2 is a little bit different, and Category 2 is your equipment and services that are inside of your school or your building. So your internal connections, your routers, your switches, your access points, stuff like that. The maximum discount for Category 2 is 85%, and all Categories 2 is subject to a 5-year E-rate funding budget. So we're at the very beginning of our new 5-year budget for 2021, and we're going to go over where that money comes from and how you get that budget. Some examples for category 1, broadband, cables, Ethernet, least dark fiber, microwave. Category 2, there's a whole list of eligible services. So these are some of the most common ones. Like I said, wireless access points, switches, routers, racks, UPS, firewalls, but not all firewalls and not all components are eligible. So you have to be really careful when applying for stuff like that. Couple other category 2, your basic maintenance, which is just the repair and upkeep of eligible hardware, configuration changes, basic tech support, including online and telephone-based technical support also. This is another one of those tricky ones. You have to kind of make sure that what you're applying for is covered and is eligible. A big part of this state is special construction, and it's a little unknown because your special construction projects can be for lit fiber, dark fiber, self-provisioning, and these are all considered a category 1 service. Now you can apply for the design and engineering, the project management, and the actual construction. Some of these projects can be a huge multi-million-dollar project, and so they do have the option on special construction that you can pay your installation payments for up to 4 years. That is an option when you're applying for this. We also have the state match on special construction projects. Right now we are waiting for funding for the current year for those applications, but in the past we have had special construction projects funded, and there have been times where you can get your out-of-pocket for the district, the special construction projects, reduced to 0 because of that state match. So if you have a discount rate of 80%, and then the state match program is if you can get the state to fund the 10%, the E-rate program can match the 10%. And so there have been times in the past where those really big projects don't cost the district any money. So this is if you have a really big project coming up, this is definitely something to look into. And I'd be happy to answer questions on that. All right, category 2 budgets. These are based on 2 different things. Your discount rate is how you get your budgets. Your enrollment numbers for this 5-year cycle, starting 2021, going through 2025, you have to validate your enrollment numbers 1 time. This is different in the past. In the past, we've had to validate your enrollment numbers every year, and this changed this year, which is really helpful. If your enrollment increases throughout the 5-year cycle, you can update those numbers to increase your discount rate. If the enrollment decreases, you are not required to update them every year. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind. You get your budget by this right here. You get $167 per student or $25,000 per single school, whichever one is greater. So when you have a district with a few different schools, you can use the $167 per student on a couple schools, and then you can use the $25,000 per school, and then you just combine those to give your district their full budget. One important thing to remember on the budgets is you cannot carry these funds over after the 5 years. So it's really important at the beginning of your 5-year cycle, get a plan in place, spend some money the first year, maybe spend a little bit more the second, but get a 5-year plan together kind of in your head so that by the end of your 5th year, you're using all of your funds, because the funds will just go away if you don't end up using them. Here is an example. So if your 5-year budget, if you get this for your district, is $94,000 and you're an 80% discount school, if you end up requesting and using all of the funds for your 5 years, the USAC will pay 80%, which is that $75,000 right there, and the district would only end up paying $18,000 over 5 years. And that's if you use all of it. You're not required to use all of your budget, but it is important and you have the money, so it is something that you should look into using if you can. At the end of the 5 years, obviously, to make sure you know what your budget is, you take what previous years you've used and you subtract that out, and that's what you'll have left the following year. This presentation and slideshow will be shared with all the attendees here at the end of this conference. And so I did put it in a couple different links right here, and this is your budget lookup tool. And so you can use that and find out what your school has for the next 5 years if you don't already know that. A big change this year on equipment transfer rules starting July 1. Any funded equipment can be transferred between buildings. The most important thing on this is that you keep your asset inventory up to date. But if you purchased equipment even 3 years ago through E-rate, in the past you were not able to transfer that just the next year if you wanted to, and now that is an option. Make sure that you're keeping good records, make sure that you know where your equipment is, but any equipment purchased through E-rate can be transferred between buildings. All right, the E-rate Productivity Center. This is going to be your home. If you do anything E-rate, Epic is where you do it. It has all of your forms. It has all of your questions. If you have questions for USAC, if you have to submit a customer service case, if you have to do any of that stuff, it's in Epic. So it would be best practice to make sure that you have your login, make sure that you've been around and you can kind of navigate in there. I know it's difficult that E-rate, it's not an everyday thing. You might do it a couple times a year when you're filling out this form or you're answering this question. So take notes of what you did, make sure you've got your login information, but really get comfortable in Epic because that's where all of your stuff is going to be. All right, so in Epic, every organization or district or library has a build entity number, and then each building within that organization has an entity number. Every Epic account or organization has users. The account administrator is the person that can give access to other users. So the account administrator can be your superintendent, can be your tech director, can be anybody that you choose, and then they will be the ones that will go in when you get a new tech director. They'll be the ones to go in and transfer that access and to give access to other people that may be using the Epic portal. So that's important to know who your account administrator is for your organization. We did have a new multi-factor authentication that became last year. So now instead of just being able to log in with your password in Epic, now there's a two-factor where it sends a code either to your email or to your phone. You have to input that and then it gives you access. So if you haven't set that up, that would be something to get done as soon as possible before the next funding year starts and you're needing to get in. Okay, discount rates. These, in my opinion, are some of the most important things that you can work on. As a business manager, as a check director, talk to your business manager, talk to your office people. The discount rate is based on two factors, and those factors are your poverty, the percentage of students district-wide that are eligible for the National School Lunch Program. There are alternate methods besides the NSLP program, but that is kind of the big one that most people do, so that's the one that we're going to just go over quickly. And whether your school, the majority of your school buildings are considered rural or urban. That's another tool that I put in there, and it's based on whether the majority of your schools are. So even in a big district, you may have 2 or 3 schools that are considered rural, but then you have 7 or 8 that are considered urban, and then your district would be considered urban because that's the majority. The discount rates can be changed each year. So this is based on your enrollment and the amount of NSLP kids. So the amount of NSLP kids, that is all based on the kids that are eligible for that program. So it's really important to get families to sign up and usually there's a form that they fill out when they register for school. That's how a lot of them do it. So it's really important to get those forms filled out and returned. And then the school reports all of that information to the state, usually in October of each year. And so that's where that information comes from. That information goes to me as a state coordinator. I give that information to the reviewers from USAC, and that's where they use a lot of that information for PIA reviews and for validating enrollment numbers. So that's really important to remember. is where those discount rates come from. As for libraries, libraries use the discount rate for the district they're located in. And same thing where a district may have a 80% discount rate. If there are 4 or 5 libraries within that district, then they go off of where the main branch is located. That doesn't happen often where that changes, but it can happen. So make sure that where your main library branch is where you use your discount from. This is just an example, your discount matrix. So if you knew what your NSLP percentage was here on the left, then you would look up for your urban and rural, and then that's where that discount comes from. That's just a document for your future. All right, like I said, your enrollment info goes to the state in early October. That's also the right time to update your EPIC profile. So the numbers that get sent to ODE, those are the numbers that you should be inputting and updating in your EPIC profile. There's a spot for enrollment and there's a spot for your NSLP numbers. So that's best practice, is to go in October or November while the window's open and you can edit your profiles. Go in, update those numbers. That way you know that they match, so that when PIAs come about, you're not going to have numbers from a year or 2 ago in your EPIC profile and the new report is saying something different. So that's just best practice, and that would really help deter some of the PIAs that have been coming out regarding enrollment validations. Okay, we're going to start a little bit on the process. There's a lot of info on these slides, and I'm just going to kind of give you the main points to remember. The purpose of the Form 470, this is where you ask for any equipment or services that you're going to want. So the Form 470, you can have 10 different items on there. But the most important thing that I want you to remember is, just because something goes on your Form 470 does not mean that you have to purchase it. You could ask for all this different equipment that you may need, and vendors are going to give you bids for it, but then that does not lock you into buying it. That's just giving you the option and getting price quotes and making sure that you covered all your bases. So the Form 470, this gets done in EPIC. This is a form that you create and you submit. Once the Form 470 is posted, you are going to have a 28-day waiting period. So I think I might have skipped a slide there. But the Form 470 and the RFP, which is just a request for proposal, can be anything. This can be a really detailed report if you're doing a really big cabling project, or you're getting a whole bunch of new services for Category 1. The RFP can be very detailed. It can also be a very simple, this is what we're looking for, a one-page document. All of those are considered RFPs, so don't think that it needs to be really detailed if it's just a very simple ask on your 470. Another big part on the 470 is, anytime you make a significant change, you have to restart the 28-day waiting period. That's if you're adding a new service, if you're changing the quantity of equipment that you're requesting, then those are significant changes and you must restart the 28-day waiting period. If you just make a change, like you made a clerical error and you spelled something wrong, that's not that big of a deal, and you can adjust that without having broken any rules. On any 470s that you upload, you have to have some form of RFP, so that's why I said just a simple document explaining this is what we're looking for. That can be uploaded, and that will suffice. All right, once the Form 470 is completed, you wait your 28 days, which is where the vendors submit your quotes and bid quotes. Then, after that 28 days is over, you evaluate bids and you select your service provider. Very, very important to remember, on your bid evaluation, the price of eligible services and equipment must be the most heavily weighted factor. There are lots of other factors that you can put in there, and you can have 3 factors or 7 or 10 or whatever you prefer. That's up to you. But the eligible service, the price of that has to be the most heavily weighted. So that's very, very important to remember. Also, make sure that you wait until after the 28 days. Best practice, give yourself your 28 days. Give yourself a calendar reminder for a day or even a two after that. Then get all of your bids together, complete your bid evaluation, and then retain all documents. Your winning bid, your losing bids, your bid eval. Make sure that you're retaining everything. Just in case you get questioned, you always need to have those documents handy. If you get a bid that you need to disqualify, you must have stated your disqualification factors in your 470. So there's a big spot in your 470 for a narrative and best practice. Make sure that you put those in there. They need to be very clear. Either they complied or they didn't. An example, vendors should submit a proposal by the deadline stated in this 470. Either they did it or they didn't. It can't be a gray area. Make sure that anything you're putting in there for a disqualification factor is very clear. If you did not receive any bids, then you are able to continue on with your existing services. This is like for category 1, where you already have your internet access from a local vendor. You can continue on with those services if you didn't receive a bid. It's really good to make sure that you make note of that. Send yourself an email, hey, no bids were received on this, continuing with vendor A. If this is a new service that you're wanting, a category 2 equipment maybe, something like that, then you can reach out to vendors and ask them to bid on it, but be very careful when it comes to the competitive bidding rule. Don't call your brother who has a sister that works at company A and have them give you, a quote when they stop by your house the next day. Make sure that it is following competitive bidding. Make sure that you are asking vendors professionally, you're requesting these bids, and you're giving that option to everybody. All right, once you select your service provider, you've completed your bid evaluation, you've completed everything you need. Then if you did get a new contract for category 1 services especially, you have to upload that contract in EPIC. I recommend doing it before you're ready to submit or complete the Form 471. Once you get into EPIC, there's a spot for new contracts. It's going to ask when you awarded your contract. It's going to ask if this is a multi-year contract. Make sure that you're putting all of that in. You're very, very careful. Once you submit your contract in EPIC, there is no way to go in and edit it. So if you do happen to make a mistake, then you will have to go in, create a new one with the updated information, and the old one will kind of just stay in there. There's no way to go in and edit it. All right, once you have your contracts uploaded into EPIC, then you can go in and create your Form 471s. Your Form 471s, similar to the Form 470, they're done in EPIC. They're going to show your discount calculation. They're going to ask you what entities are receiving service. And this is your formal request for E-rate funding. This is what the Form 471 is, requesting the funding that you want. Each Form 471 has FRNs, or funding request numbers, and then each funding request number has line items. So it's broken down where you might buy a switch, which would be on one FRN line item, and then the taxes and fees for that switch would be another line item. So it's broken out very detailed, and that is how your 471 will look. In the past, the Form 471 windows have been from about mid-January to the end of March. We have had that same one for a couple of years now, so we would assume next year will be the same, but we don't actually know that. That will come out, and that information will come out in the fall. Category 1 and Category 2 Form 471s must be filed on separate applications. And there's no limit on how many applications you can apply for. You can have 2 for Category 1. You can have 2 or 3 for Category 2. If you have a cabling project you want to put on one, and you have equipment on another one, you can break those out however you want, and there's no limit on how you do that. Best practice, give yourself plenty of time on Form 471s. If the window opens in mid-January and you already have your contracts, you already have all of your stuff. There's nothing wrong with submitting your Form 471 the end of January or in February. The last week to 10 days of the filing window in March, Epic is really busy. Everyone is working on it. Everyone struggled getting contracts, so everyone's in there creating it. So it's slow. So don't wait until the last hour to get these forms submitted. Make sure that you're giving yourself plenty of time. You never know if you're going to get kicked out, if you have internet issues, all the things that can happen. Just really make sure that you're giving yourself a lot of extra time to get these things completed. All right, after Form 471s comes the fun part, which is the PIA reviews. And like I said, if you submit your Form 471 at the end of January, these PIA reviews can come a day after that. They can come a month after that. So it can be done. These will come anytime after your Form 471s are completed and submitted. The PIAs are a Program Integrity Assurance Review. They're very common. They can be anything from let's validate your enrollment that's on your application, let's double check your discount rate, let's make sure that you followed competitive bidding. So these come in through your Epic portal and through an email for the account administrator. So that's why it's really important to know who your account administrator is. And they will get an email, and then they will also get a notification in Epic saying you've got a PIA review, and you get 15 days to answer these reviews. You are granted a 1-week extension if you request that. So sometimes, you're waiting on some documents from a vendor, or you're waiting to get them from your business office, and you might need a few more days. So you can request that 1-week extension. But I recommend as soon as your review comes in, get a list together of what you need. Make sure that you have everything. If you don't, reach out to the people that can give it to you, and then get that response submitted as soon as you can. All right. Some applications don't go through the review. They don't get a PIA review. They just go through the regular review and get funded. And this is where your funding comes in, your funding commitment decision letter. These come via email. You can also find copies of them in your Epic portal, but you get these in an email. Usually the first wave of these comes out about a month after the application window closes. And then the last couple of years, they've came on Thursdays. So for the rest of this year, I assume they're going to keep following that schedule. And we call these different waves, so the waves of FCDLs that are going out. And this is where you get your decision. If you put in a Category 1 application, it went through the review process, then your FCDL should show you were awarded this much funding. If there is anything that they denied or maybe reduced, that should all come during the PIA review. They should be emailing you back when they're complete, and it should say something, we have decided to reduce this for this reason. So that will all come in the PIA review. So the FCDL shouldn't have any surprises on it. If it does, you'll have to make sure that you didn't miss something in the PIA review, you don't have a question on it, but the FCDL should match what you're expecting. All right, after you get your FCDL, your funding, the next part is to create and submit your Form 486. The Form 486 is letting USAC know that you are planning to use the funds awarded, tells them when your service start date is, and is telling them that you are SIPA compliant. There's nothing new about the Form 486. This is another form that you do in Epic. Another thing to do in Epic, so you got to make sure that you've got access to that. And you can't do the Form 486 until the FCDL is received. As soon as the FCDL is received, then this is accessible. And my advice is to get it submitted. As long as your FCDL is what you wanted, you don't have any surprises on that, there's no reason to wait on your Form 486. It's one of those things where you've got your funding, and I know personally how hard it is to remember, oh, I gotta go do that. So if you put it off and put it off, then you can easily get a couple months down the road and, oh, I didn't submit that. Well, no invoices can be submitted on your funding until the Form 486 is completed. So my advice is to get it submitted within a week of receiving your FCDL. Just go in, get it done, and you don't have to worry about it. The deadline to submit Form 486s is 120 days after the FCDL or October 28 of the funding year, whichever one is later. So you do have a few months to get it completed, but if there's no reason to wait, then you might as well get it done. We all know how busy this world is, especially right now. So just get it completed and then you don't have to worry about it. All right, after your Form 486 is done, you're kind of just ready to start services. Your Category 1 service is between July 1 and June 30th of each year. Category 2 services, you can start purchasing your Category 2 starting April 1, and they can be purchased all the way through the funding year, plus you actually have, 2 more months, the end of September. So your Category 2 can be purchased anytime between April 1 and September 30 the following year. So you have plenty of time to get all of your equipment, your hardware, your cabling, all of that has plenty of time to get done and completed. Okay, paying for your services. There are 2 different options for the E-rate program. The bearer program is reimbursement. So the district pays the full cost of the invoice, and then they submit the Form 472, which is the bearer form, and they get reimbursed for USAC's portion. So if you're an 80% district, you would pay 100% upfront, and then you submit your bearer and request that USAC pays 80% because that's what your discount rate is. So you have to have a little bit more money up front, but that's the option number 1. Option number 2, which is the SPI billing method, is where your vendor or your service provider invoices you for your portion, so your 20%, and then they invoice USAC for the 80%. So you don't need to pay the full invoice, you only pay your portion. It's really up to the district on what you prefer. That's something that you should talk to your business managers in your business office about. But service providers are very used to both sides of it. So whichever one you prefer, just make sure that you get a hold of your service provider before your services start and let them know which one you're going to go with. This is just an overview of the timeline and the application process. We've talked about all of this, just how you start creating your plan, you update your EPIC profiles, you're getting your Form 470s created, you're doing your bid evals and signing contracts, submitting your Form 471s, application review, which is that PIA process, receive your FCDLs, submit your Form 486, receive services, receive equipment, and then pay for all your services. All right, I just wanted to give this again. I have the USAC website, which has a lot of information on it. The USAC Customer Service Bureau, which is where this is where you're going to call when you have an issue. This is where you're going to go to, have any questions answered. If you have a problem with the reviewer, if you have a problem with your application, you can always call and they can look this up and help you. I also recommend submitting customer service case in EPIC. There's a spot in there to do that, and you can kind of get that submitted with all of your information. You're able to upload documents if you have any of those at that time, and then they can get back to you that way. This is more of a non-urgent question if you have a few days for them to look into something and get back to you. If you do have an urgent thing that you need addressed, then I would recommend calling. And then they also have a weekly newsletter, so I published that link right there as well that you can sign up for. As for my office, we do a weekly newsletter as well. We cover anything that's new, some upcoming dates and reminders, stuff like that. So that's a link that I can send to you personally. My email's right here. If you email me and say, hey, I want to get on your list, I'll send you the link and you can get signed up. You can also send me any questions that come up, anything, as small as it is, as big as it is. If you need help with something, if you just have a simple question that you need clarified, shoot me an email anytime. There's no problem with that. I'm happy to answer questions and hopefully get you where you need to be. Okay, there's a few more slides, and this is about the Emergency Connectivity Fund. This fund was part of the American Rescue Plan of 2021, established a $7 billion fund for eligible schools and libraries for purchases. Now, the official rules for this are not out. We're expecting them to be out by May 10th, which I believe is next Monday. They did send out the draft rules last Friday. So I read those over, I took some highlights, and we're gonna just go over them. But please remember, these are the drafts. This is not the official ruling. So this is just where we're at as of right now. All schools and libraries that are eligible for the E-rate program are eligible for ECF. ECF is not E-rate. They're doing a lot of the similar things. They're using our portal. A lot of the same E-rate rules are going to apply, but it is technically not part of the E-rate program. So just remember that there may be some differences, and that is why. They're going to have the first 45-day window for all retroactive purchases. Now, this Emergency Connectivity Fund is for the hotspots you may have purchased during the pandemic, the laptops, the tablets, all of those types of things. That's what this fund is for. Now, this first window is for all retroactive purchases made between July 1, 2020 and April 30th, 2021. So there is an option for a second window. If the funds don't get used up in the first one, then they have discussed having a second window for any purchases April 30th on. But right now we don't know what that is going to look like or if that even is going to happen. A couple of the stipulations: 1 fixed broadband connection per location and 1 connected device and 1 Wi-Fi hotspot per student, staff member, or library patron. All right, so like I said, some of the E-rate rules apply. They are doing the Form 471 is what they're going to use to apply for this, and they're going to use the Form 472, which is that bare reimbursement form. So these are all purchases that your school has already made, and as long as these purchases are deemed reasonable, this is 100% reimbursement. So if you bought 20 hotspots and you can prove that these kids had no other option at home, this is why you purchased them and gave them to them, you will get reimbursed 100% for those hotspots. They are still figuring out the deeming reasonable and how they're going to have schools kind of prove that there was no other options. That's still in the works, but I'm hoping that will be clarified come Monday when they give us all of the official rules on this program. There is no E-rate competitive bidding since all of these things have already been purchased. There's no way that we could retroactively go back and expect a 28-day waiting period. That's just not an option. So they have waived the competitive bidding for E-rate, and they just expect you to follow your state procurement rules. Another big issue that we were kind of worried about was the SIPA compliance. Is how do you make sure that they're compliant when these devices are at home? And what they came up with is, for schools that have already completed your Form 486, which was that SIPA compliance, they're using that as your SIPA compliance for this ECF program. So as long as you've submitted your Form 486 for year 2021, then you're going to be cleared for this and you don't have to worry about any other certification. Document retention, same as E-rate, keep everything. Keep everything you have, and you're going to keep it for a long time. You must keep everything for at least 10 years. That's best practice anyways, and that should not be anything new when it comes to the E-rate program. Here's just a list of what is eligible. Wi-Fi hotspots are the most common, but the Aircards wireless data plans, you have to prove that they were most cost effective. And then your connected devices, your laptop, tablet, similar end user devices. Not eligible desktop, mobile phones, smartphone. Those were deemed ineligible on the draft list, and I know that there was quite a few people across the country that kind of fought for those to be eligible, but they did decide that those were not going to be on the eligible list for this. And they did go with eligible locations, home of students, community centers, churches. Those are just some of the most common ones, but if you have a different one, a different eligible location where you had your, a few students working with a hotspot that you provided and your end user devices, then what they're saying right now is apply on your Form 471, and when they come back with questions, then you can make your case for this is what we did, this is why we did it. So they're kind of saying if you're on the bubble and you're not sure if it was eligible, then apply. They're going to come back, they're going to ask you questions, they're going to ask for documents, all the things. So if you're on the edge, there's no harm in applying, just be ready to explain. Okay, that's a lot. I went over a lot of different things, the program in general, the ECF, like I said, it's still underway. So that's not all official yet, but that's what it's looking like it's going to be. We haven't had a start date told for the ECF program. We're not sure when that first 45 window is going to start. We're hoping this summer. We know that they're in a rush to get this done and get this money back to the schools. But until then, we do not have that start date for you. So I would be happy to take questions or comments or anything.
Hey, Jen, I can't remember, so pardon me. Are you able to see the conversations in Q&A?
Yes, I am. Let's see, Q&A.
Okay.
Here we go.
Let me just start off here while you see that. Casey Schmidt asked, I heard web filters are now covered under category 2. Is that true?
Yes, but it's one of those things. Hold on, must be in the wrong section here.
I'm happy to tell them to you too.
That's okay. Web filters is one of those kind of like firewalls where they've kind of gone back and forth of this is a little eligible, this isn't eligible. So I don't want to tell you that it's fully eligible because I don't know on that one. I can definitely look into that and give you an answer and give you a full on this part, this isn't. So let me make a note of that.
I will say, Casey, I know that other districts, this is not, dispositive, but I know that other districts have felt like Lightspeed, GoGuardian, the filtering elements have been and have applied for reimbursement on those. Whether they'll get that or not, I can't tell you, but I know that you wouldn't be alone in thinking it's eligible. And then Casey he has a follow-up question here. ECF includes service plan for the hotspot or just the hardware. So
no, it does include service plans. That's kind of where there's a gray area. They haven't been super specific on that, on how much is eligible, if all of them are eligible, but I do know that the internet access that goes with a hotspot is eligible in some way. But they haven't given me a number yet, of $50 a month. They haven't labeled it or anything like that, but I do know the service will be eligible in some way.
Oh, that's great to hear. Stephen McCandless asks, what if we used CARES funding to pay for the hotspots? Will it still be reimbursable under, E-rate?
Well, I haven't had that question come up, but I don't see why not. It was still funding that was provided to the school, and the school still paid for it.
Okay. And then maybe you answered this at the very end, but Mark said, when will the ECF open?
Well, I don't know that for sure. We're hoping this summer. The official rules are supposed to come out on Monday, May 10th, and then you have to give them, a few weeks to get it all set up and together. So I would guess this summer, June or July. June might be a little early, but that's just my personal guess. I haven't been told anything on that start date.
Great. And then, Jim, what do you know about ODE or Oregon's matching program?
Well, I know that right now in Oregon, we have about 8, I think, that are the applications are put on hold right now because we're waiting for funds for that state match program. So we had, 8 or so schools apply for a big special construction project, but then we're waiting for those funds for the state match, because if there's no state match, then the amount that the school would have to pay is just too much for those schools to handle. And so if there isn't funds put into that state match this year, then those projects will not be happening.
And who is authorizing the funds on that state matching? Is it a state legislator or is it a federal government?
No, it's state legislator, and I have a contact at ODE, and that's who I work with. And we just asked for an update on that of, hey, have you heard anything? And they're still kind of in a waiting game right now also.
Okay. So Josh, write your rep might help in getting that through. Any other questions? You can put it in the chat or the Q&A. I'm happy to get it over to Jen. I don't see any left in here. I'll give it just a second.
And I will share this presentation, and it can be shared for all of you. It's got some great links on it. It also has my contact information, so please reach out if you have questions. In any capacity, I'd be happy to answer them or direct you to somebody else if it's not something in my wheelhouse.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, we will. Jen, ACPE will also collect it from you, and we'll distribute it out to all the attendees.
Perfect.
In a structured way, and then you're free to send it out too.
Okay, great.
Okay, well, seeing no other questions, I just want to say thanks again, Jen. I really appreciate your time with us in explaining a very confusing and somewhat fraught topic. What you and Intermountain are doing for Oregon is terrific. We really appreciate it. We also want to maximize those dollars that we get back in the state. So thanks for making that possible. And everyone else, please visit the sponsors when you get a chance, and know that the next session block, I'll tell you right now, I'm sure you can read the schedules. We have a break from 9:45 to 10, and then we have the keynote starting at 10 a.m. So you've got a little bit of time, and hope to see you all there.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much.
Okay. Bye, Jen. Bye, everyone.